The common thread is a concern for the state of humanity.
What are we doing today? Are we responding?
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Hello, everyone. I'm Johnnette Williams, and welcome to our special live simulcast edition of Women of Grace. What a pleasure to be with you via television and radio and all manner of social media. Our phone screeners are standing by and look forward to taking your calls today. You know that your comments, insights, inspirations, and words of encouragement are important to us here on Women of Grace. So frequently, the question you ask is the very one on the heart of another, and you bless them by asking it. I'll be giving you the phone number throughout the program, and we'll do our best to get you on the air. My suggestion, call early. The phone lines get very busy as our program progresses. Now, if you happen to be out there on social media, make your way to EWTN Radio's Facebook page and YouTube channel, where you can also submit your questions and comments. It's hard to escape the fact that marriage is under attack today, and many contemporary but erroneous thoughts and attitudes about it abound. In fact, it seems as if secular media and other influential voices have coalesced to confuse the popular mindset regarding the true purpose, meaning, and value of marriage. Rarely, if ever, is a cogent, unbiased, and reasoned evaluation of cohabitation, premarital sex, contraception, and reproductive technologies heard by contemporary Catholics. Rather, myths or dead silence hold sway, even in our own parishes. But today, we're going to hit this topic head on. Our guests will talk with us about love, marriage, and happiness, and lay bare some of the biggest myths about them. See what science, faith, and philosophy can tell us. Stay with us for an enlightening discussion with Professor Christopher Kaiser and Father Scott Borgman.
We are women of grace round the throne of the Lord Most High. And we lift up our praise from the depths of our souls. Hear our cry. Oh, Lamb of God, it is our one desire to see your holy face, women of grace.
It's always funny to look back. Yeah. We all want happiness and fulfillment, and for the man and woman called to the married state, we seek it in the life we live with the other. And yet this very hope is both thwarted and frustrated by the common contemporary misconceptions and misunderstandings that abound about this holy institution and the way it should be lived and experienced. Today, our guests will seek to correct the misunderstandings and help us attain a true and deeper appreciation for this most basic cell of human society. Let me introduce you to Christopher Kaiser and Father Scott Borgman. Father Scott Borgman is a past coordinating secretary for the Pontifical Academy for Life in Rome, often referred to as the think tank of the Catholic Church. Currently, he serves as the judicial vicar of the Office of Canonical Services for the Diocese of Orange in California. Christopher Kaiser is a professor of philosophy at Loyola Marymount University and the author of several books, including the one that sets the topic for our program today, The 7 Big Myths About Marriage. It is available for you at EWTN's Religious Catalog. Simply go to EWTNRC.com. Let's welcome Professor Chris Kaiser and Father Scott Borgman. Gentlemen, welcome to Women of Grace today.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Well, it's been so good to have you with us. Yesterday, we actually spent the whole day together as we unveiled some of the myths about the Catholic Church, and that's going to be up and coming for you in future weeks. So stay tuned to see when we will be airing that program, series of programs. Absolutely terrific. And, you know, here we are again, and we're talking about these myths that abound about very important matters. And nothing could be more important in our day and time than correcting the myths about marriage. I mean, marriage is under such attack. Even redefinition of marriage is beginning to take place. You know, in your pastoral situations, Father, how do you advise people? I mean, it's just a cacophony of erroneous ideas and attitudes.
Well, it's a wonderful opportunity to meet the couple and to kind of hear about their story, because every love story is unique and has beautiful anecdotes to it, and so getting to know them and trying to also understand where they are in their understanding of what marriage is. And oftentimes I ask them, well, you know, why are you trying to get married? Why would you want to get married in the church? Sometimes I'll even hint a little bit, like, are you ready to get a divorce? Do you want to get a divorce? And obviously they're no, you know, they're very young and in love. And I'll say, well, then let's work together toward a very long-term relationship. We're thinking about 25, 50 years. My parents celebrated 50 years last year.
Well, congratulations to them.
Thank you. Beautiful testimony of faithfulness, and that it is possible to stay together. So.
Well, it's a beautiful opportunity, I think, when you hit these landmarks, to be a tremendous witness, because today we live in a culture that is rather disposable, slightly narcissistic, which I think is putting it mildly, and you know, not really firmly footed on the idea that a relationship is meant to last forever. At the first sign of peril or difficulty or struggle, you know, the parachute goes and people, you know, just bail out of the thing. And I'm so curious, because you've given us these 2 books on myths. Why did you, Christopher Kaiser, want to unveil these myths, these common misconceptions that we have in our contemporary culture today about marriage in particular?
Yeah, so the book arose out of my teaching, actually. So my very first job as a philosophy professor, the Jesuit chair of the department came to me and said, would you be willing to teach this course on the ethics of love and marriage? It was very popular with the students, and the professor who taught it before is not here any longer, so would you teach it? And I was a brand new untenured faculty member, and if the chair of the department asks you to do something, you say, yes, sir, I will be happy to do that. I'd love to do it.
Oh, you've been wanting to do this forever.
Exactly, wanting to do it forever. And so I'd never taught a course like that at all, and so I got the course packet from the previous instructor and looked through it, and there's lots of interesting things here. And so I taught it for the first time, and it really was very popular with the students. I've taught courses that are extremely boring, you know, logic, and you're going through syllogism, and the students are all asleep. But this course, no, they really cared about it. They were really invested. We were talking about, you know, what is friendship, what is love, and talking about these things that are really in their hearts. And so I enjoyed teaching it, and they seemed to enjoy being in class. And so I've taught it now over the last 20 years, and I really like teaching it, because I think that very few decisions that someone makes is as important as the choice to get married. And so what I try to do in the class is make it very practical and say, you know, I've been married over 25 years. My parents were married over 50 years also, a huge blessing for me. And so I tell the students, I say, I want you to have a great life. I want you to be really happy. I hope that you have a, you know, full flourishing. And for most of you, probably part of that's going to be marriage. So let's really think carefully about this, because, you know, again, in life, very few decisions are more important than that. So we talk about the nature of marriage, and we start off really with the marriage vow, because it's a classic. You know, I take you to be my wife in good times and in bad, in sickness and in health, until death do us part. And so we kind of start with that and say, well, let's think about, what are you really getting into? What does this really mean? And my way of explaining it is, the vow is really about unconditional love, right? You're promising to love your spouse no matter what, good times and in bad, right? Unconditionally. And so that's sort of how we start. We kind of begin explaining what marriage is, kind of based on that. And I really enjoy teaching the course. I've taught it for a long time, and I hope to continue teaching it for a long time to come. Yeah,
you know, when we think about it, and I think that before we get into these myths about marriage, and these myths also are what I would suggest certain ways in which to destroy this marital union that you're trying to begin, you know. They're going to have a deleterious impact on this coming together as husband and wife. But I do think that it's important for us to anchor this whole conversation in the definition for what love is, and also what vocation is. Because a call to the married state is not just because you fall head over heels into infatuation with somebody and decide, well, maybe this is love, you know. It isn't that kind of a thing. I mean, it's a vocation, and a vocation has a very real, definitive purpose and goal in mind. So, Father, let's talk a little bit about vocation.
Well, it's beautiful to look at what love is, and we say, you know, we're kind of so familiar with this idea of God being love, but we don't really think in depth what that means. And love is very effusive of itself. It gives, and I like to tell couples, look, you're going to get to the point where you're at your wit's end, where you've loved as far as you think you can love. And you say, I can't love any further, but when you go further and you love, you continue to love, then you find what you're actually looking for in marriage. And I had a wonderful moment before I knew that my vocation was to the priesthood, of kind of reading Proverbs 31, where it says, he who finds a wife finds a good thing. I thought, oh, well, you got to look. You got to go out and look. So I made my little list of things. I started asking couples, you know, what should I look for in a wife? And some of them had been married a long time, and I got all these wonderful answers. Some of them very comical. One guy said, well, whatever you do, don't give her your wallet, you know. But at the end of the day, I realized that my list was kind of the perfect woman, and I thought, well, what kind of husband would she marry? Well, it definitely wasn't me. And that's why I became a priest. No, that's not right. But I met one guy who had a lot of trouble with his marriage, and he was a marriage counselor after that time. And he said they had to get to the point where they said, there's nothing you can do to make me leave you. And at that point, they began to work on their marriage. And then he looked at me, and in answer to my question, what should I look for in a woman? He said, well, you're not gonna find the kind of wife you're looking for until you die to yourself. Fair enough. So
yes.
He paused, and then he continued. That's why I interrupted you.
That's okay.
He continued and said, she won't find the kind of husband she's looking for until you die to yourself. And I thought, well, when does she need to be doing the dying? And it made me realize that I needed to give 100%. And that was when I would find what I was looking for. And I've applied that to my priesthood as well.
You know, you've opened up the opportunity for us to talk about one of the myths in what you've just shared here, and I'm thinking about my recent wedding to Mr. Jack Williams, who's the general manager.
Congratulations, that's so beautiful.
Of EWTN Radio here. And you know, Father Wade Menezes was our celebrant, our presider for our wedding ceremony. And in his homily, he gave two quotes, one kind of funny. Well, he gave several quotes. These two are our favorites. One of them is kind of funny. The other one, I think, contains within it a great big truth. And the funny one is that, you know, what keeps a marriage together? And what keeps a marriage together is going out to dinner twice a week. She on Monday nights, he on Wednesday nights. and then the other one, the one that's really, really gripping, I think, is marriage is two imperfect people who absolutely refuse to give up on each other. And this brings us to this idea that you mentioned here about, well, you know, it's not 50%, it's 100%. It's 100% investment, even if the other person is investing 0% in the marriage at a time. And that's one of the myths you talk about in your book. Chris, you talk about the myth of, you know, it's a 50%, 50%,
Right.
50-50 contract, you put it.
Right.
Marriage isn't a contract to begin with, but let's talk about that.
Yeah, no, that's right. It's a covenant, and a covenant is about giving yourself. It's not just about exchange of goods and services, and I'll provide this, you provide that. It's about giving yourself fully, comprehensively. And I think that's something that at least my students, they've never really heard of this sort of idea of, you know, you're loving your spouse and you're promising to be united with your spouse as a spouse 100%. And there's kind of no exceptions. And they, what do you mean no exceptions? What about this? What about that? I said, no exceptions. So it's akin to a covenant. It's a family relationship. So you think about, you know, I have kids, and so I am committed to my kids. I love my kids no matter what. And you say, well, what if your son does this? What if your daughter does that? What if, I said, well, look, no matter what they do, I'm still their father. And no matter what I do, you know, they're still my kid. And so this relationship, this family relationship is unconditional. And that's a relationship that a marriage covenant creates between the husband and wife, that they are husband and wife, again, as the words say, until death do us part. And that's what makes marriage a reflection of God's love, right? Because God loves us unconditionally, right? There's nothing we can do that makes us, that God doesn't love us anymore. And so, you know, marriage is a sacrament. It's a way of in the world, realizing and manifesting some small inclination of God's love.
And to be a sign of that love in the world, which is one of the vocational aspects of marriage. When we come back, friends, more with our guest today, Professor Christopher Kaiser and Father Scott Borgman. Stay with us. Hello, friends. I am happy to invite you to become a member of Women of Grace Exclusive. That's right, an exclusive membership. By becoming a Women of Grace Exclusive member, you will have anytime, anywhere access to a vast library of resources, including our television programs, radio shows, and podcasts, our archived webinars by outstanding presenters, church documents and articles, and so much more. It's affordable, educational, and inspirational. With one click, more than 25 years of resources are yours on an exclusive basis. It's a membership program for such a time as this. Visit our website at www.womenofgrace.com for more information. Again, that's www.womenofgrace.com.
Look who's reading the register. Go to ncregister.com and click on the 3 months free banner or call 800-421-3230. Subscribe today and get 3 months free of the National Catholic Register.
Soul of Christ, sanctify me. Body of Christ, save me. Blood of Christ, inebriate me. Water from Christ's side, wash me. Passion of Christ, strengthen me. O good Jesus, hear me. Within thy wounds hide me. Suffer me not to be separated from thee. From the malicious enemy defend me. In the hour of my death call me, and bid me come to thee, that I may praise thee with thy saints and with thy angels forever and ever. Amen.
Yeah, a lot of hot air here.
Welcome back, friends. We're visiting with our guest today. Professor Christopher Kaiser is with us and Father Scott Borgman, and we're talking about the 7 big myths about marriage. They're all contained for you in this very, very good book, one that, you know, every married couple should have this book, and any couple that is planning to become married should have this book. It's available for you out there at EWTN's Religious Catalog. It's the 7 Big Myths About Marriage, written by Christopher Kaiser. We want you to get out to EWTNRC.com and order a copy for yourself and all of the ones whose marriages you really care about, which should be everybody. So get out there and check it out. You know, we went to the break there and we were talking about some really important things, and we were talking about this notion of, you know, first of all, marriage is not a contract, it's a covenant. There is a civil contract, you know, to make it legal, but it certainly is not that in the eyes of God. It's a covenantal relationship. And you, Chris, were telling us that it likens to God himself, right? And the way in which he loves us. And we were also talking about the fact that it is a vocation. And so when we think of vocation, we naturally think of sacrifice. And that is truly what love is, isn't it, Father?
Well, it is. And the good news is there's not an innumerable amount of things that can go wrong. I mean, this is 7 big myths. There's probably a couple more, but not too many more. And any successful relationship has to apply a certain number of things. The church has been in the marriage business for a long, long time, decades, even centuries and 2,000 years. And so it's like buying a house. Like if you're going to buy a house, especially in California where I am, you've got to make sure the foundation is good, that it's not cracked because by the earthquakes or whatever, because that's going to be a big expense. And the other expenses might be the roof, which has to be changed eventually, the electrical, the plumbing, and then the general structure of the house. But that's 5 things. And if you're going to build your marriage house, as it were, on the rock, there's going to be certain foundational things, which I think are all included in this book, and which Professor can elaborate for us. But the good news is there's just those things, and being able to put them into place, get help when you need help, will allow you to have a successful and happy and very long and fulfilling marriage as God intended.
Yeah, and you know, as you liken it to a house, I mean, when you're in need of, you know, a plumber, you call a plumber. When you're in need of an electrician, you call an electrician. If you need an engineer, you call an engineer. So marriages are going to have ups and downs. Yeah. You know, you have to know who and what your resources are to help you get over the hump. And I think one of the myths that we were talking about, the one myth we were talking about prior to the break there, Chris, this 50 50-50 contract. You know, the problem with that is that, you know, these bumps, you know, if you're only doing 50% of the marriage, a bump is going to just throw you off the road. You know, you're going to crash. So I want to talk a little bit about what do you do? You know, people will say today, well, divorce is so easy, it's no fault. And you hit a rough moment in the road there of marriage, and you hit an irreconcilable difference, you know, and you say, okay, so that's it. You know, I can't live with dirty socks on the floor anymore. Just cannot do this. I am done. This is the straw that broke the camel's back. What do we do about these things?
Yeah, well, the psychological research shows very clearly that all couples have irreconcilable differences, you know, whether it's about politics or about how to raise the kids or about where to live. And there's always, when you have two different people, they're going to not see eye to eye at all times. And so the challenge is to see, well, look, we have irreconcilable differences. That doesn't mean that we have to be miserable. It doesn't mean that we have to get divorced. There are happily married couples that have these differences. So part of moving forward with those is to recognize that that's the reality, and that's okay. That's okay, because all marriages on earth here involve two imperfect people. Of course, if you bring together two imperfect people, the marriage itself is not going to be perfect.
That's
so
right.
I think part of it is having realistic expectations and not thinking, well, every day is going to be glorious. It's a nonstop honeymoon for 50 years. All marriages have ups and downs. And again, if we go to the psychological research, it shows that about 80% of couples who report being very unhappy at one time in the marriage, if they stick with it, later report being either happy or very happy. So it's a little bit like your health. Very few people are born and go all the way through their life and never have a serious health problem. You know, people have a heart attack, they have a stroke, they get cancer, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're dead and that's the end of your life. A lot of people have a heart attack and they come back, they have cancer, they fight it off. And the same thing's true in a marriage. You know, you can have a period of difficulty and darkness and trouble, but that's what the grace of the sacrament's there for, right? To help us to carry out our commitment of unconditional love. For the sake of God, for the sake of our spouse, for the sake of any kids we may have, and for the sake of the whole community.
Well, I don't think that there's a greater intercessory prayer than suffering. And, you know, by virtue of our baptism, we're all going to experience the cross of our Lord. It's promised to us. You know, the Paschal Mystery itself, we're baptized into the Paschal Mystery, which is the passion, the death, and the resurrection.
Right.
Passion and death generally precede the resurrection, right?
Always
So
do.
we've got to know, I mean, even in your vocational experience as a priest, Father, I mean, we all experience dark nights. We all experience seasons where things get really rough. But God permits those moments in our life to really be about the process of perfecting us and purifying us and sanctifying us so that we can indeed be His reflection in the world. So we don't want to give up. And I think that, you know, what we have today, unfortunately, are societal conventions that a generation or two ago would never have been accepted, that have become part and parcel of some kind of collective consciousness, you know, in our cultural mindset that says all of these things that were once prohibitions, taboos, are now accepted. And what we're discovering is that they're really very detrimental to marriage. I'm talking here about a big one, cohabitation. The majority of young couples today live together. Well, we're going to try this out. You know, let's just see how compatible we are. I mean, that's a recipe for disaster. You're setting yourself up to eventually become divorced because you're going to break a relationship after a relationship. Let's talk about why is cohabitation such a bad idea?
Well, there's a lot of research on cohabitation, and unfortunately, some people think that cohabiting is a good way of reducing the likelihood of marriage. But in fact, the studies show that couples that
Likelihood
cohabit...
of divorce.
Or, sorry,
Reducing the
reduce
likelihood of
divorce. I mean,
It might also reduce the
yeah.
likelihood of marriage.
yeah, but in fact, what the research shows is that couples that cohabit are actually about 80% more likely to divorce.
Wow.
So not less, but more likely to divorce. And in fact, the longer a couple cohabits, the higher their rates of divorce. So think about a famous case of Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. You know, they cohabited for I think 8 or 9 years or something, then got married, and then got divorced 2 years later. So that might be a surprise to people, but actually that is what the research shows. The other thing that my students are surprised about is they don't really think about cohabitation as particularly detrimental to women. And so I talk about the research that shows that around the world, men and women significantly differ in what they look for in a marriage partner. So around the world, basically, men value youth and beauty in a marriage partner more than women do. And around the world, women value ability to provide and economic stability more than more than men do. So if you take a couple that is cohabiting together, say Jack and Jill move in together, they're 25, and then they live together for the next 5, 6, 7 years, another 32. So most cohabiting couples don't get married 80%. So what's happened over time? Well, what's happened over time typically is the man has gained more of what most women are looking for in a marriage partner. So if I think about my own case, when I was 25, I was a graduate student making $10,000 a year, and then 32, I was a professor making a lot more. I was much more eligible, you might say. And then what's happened to the woman over time? Well, she's lost more of what most men are looking for in a marriage partner, right? Surveys show that the average woman is not as young and beautiful at 32 as she was at 25. So relative to where they began, basically the man has gotten ahead and the woman has fallen behind. So when I explain this to my students, a lot of them are like, oh my gosh, I've never thought of this before.
I think you probably scare all of the young women in your class.
Big time.
Well, I asked them, I say, well, do you think this is right? I mean, from what I've said, does this correspond to the reality? And basically they all agree that they think, yeah, this is true. And so that's one of the reasons I like teaching the course is I think it can be helpful to them and to have them say, look, I'm not going to cohabit. I can see how now it really is detrimental to me. I'm really happy to be able to help them out like that.
Yeah, well, it's very important for them to understand the realities of these things. And then, of course, Father, there's the big question of what sin does to any relationship. I want to talk about that, but first I want to give the numbers to all of you that are out there with us today. 800-221-9460 is the toll-free number that you can use to join us here, calling in with your questions, your comments, your insights, your inspirations, your words of encouragement. 800-221-9460. For those of you out there listening to us via radio or another platform, that's a little different than the number that we typically give. 800-221-9460, toll free here in North America. Outside of North America, we've got a number for you too, and you might want to use this one because maybe you'll get in faster. It is country code 1-205-271-2980. That's country code 1-205-271-2980. I don't think that we understand the connection, Father, between the effects of sin in our lives and what toll that takes on any and all relationships. So, if you're starting off in a pattern of sin, and cohabiting is sin, right? I mean, the fornicating element of it is a grave sin. You're really not building a foundation upon which you can build anything that's going to last.
Well, a big part of love is communicating, and a big part of anyone who's been married for 3 days knows that it's all about communicating, and often you experience a lot of that before you tie the knot, as it were. And so when you don't run to sex as a response to difficulties in the relationship, you're forced to actually kind of confront your own issues and communicate in a different way. And we know that there's always various ways of loving. And so you find ways of working out the difficulties of being able to compromise, which a big part of love is compromising. And I just want to mention here too that the church is not saying that someone who's in an abusive relationship should stay in that relationship. So I want to be very clear about that. If there's physical or emotional abuse there, the person needs to be safe and get their children out of harm's way. But in a normal situation, you also need not only good communication skills, which grow over time, but also the support of the sacraments. I think it's not indifferent, the idea of frequent confession, which allows you to go and confess your sins and then walk away completely free. It's like a car wash.
That's right.
Nobody stays in the car wash longer than they have to, but then they go and they're clean and ready to approach the marriage covenant again with a better point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. And it reminds us of the fact that the need to use the sacrament of confession is the same for everyone. Within the marital covenant, it really does help to cement that bond, and it also enables us to say, "I'm sorry for what I did or what I said," and so it's a beautiful training ground for that. Friends, we're going to go off to our break, and I want to send you out to EWTN's religious catalog, EWTNRC.com. This program, by the way, as as well as Christopher Kaiser's book is available for you there. The 7 Big Myths About Marriage, it's there for you. Do join us here, toll free, 800-221-9460. That's 800-221-9460. We're going to be right back, inviting you to stay with us.
I was away from the church for about 20 years. I was a Protestant, and I was happy where I was. My mother was a regular viewer of the network, and when she passed away, one of the things she had left me was Mother Angelica's book. I read it, and I began watching EWTN, especially the daily Mass before work. It was through watching EWTN that got me going to Mass every day. I've been back to the Catholic Church probably for about 5 years now. My Protestant friends were worried about me, but I said, don't worry. I'm not doing less, I'm doing more. Because being Catholic is the fullness of the faith. Thank you, EWTN, for bringing me back to my faith.
Just another example of the kind of letters we receive every day because of your ongoing prayers and financial support. To act now, just go to EWTN.com and click Donate, or call us at 1-800-447-EWTN, or send your donation to EWTN, 5817 Old Leeds Road, Irondale, Alabama 35210.
What role does the Blessed Virgin have in salvation history, and how has she influenced the modern church?
The story, it's not over and done with. We're standing in the stream of salvation history right now.
Matthew Leonard illuminates the mysteries and prophecies surrounding the Virgin Mary like never before.
Mary's not some far-off figure in the Bible. She's a loving mother who continues to look after her precious children, you and me.
The Bible and the Virgin Mary, Monday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern on EWTN.
Welcome back, friends. We're visiting with our guest today. We've got Father Scott Borgman with us. We've got Christopher Kaiser with us, and we're talking about the 7 big myths about marriage, and we're just moving around through these myths together here, hoping to dispel them for you, and also hoping to equip you to be able to speak to others about these realities, having fact and not fiction at the ready. You know, so much of our job here today as Catholics in the world is to evangelize the world. That is our baptismal duty and responsibility. So when we have the resources available, when we have the knowledge available, we can really do a great deal of good in helping people to come into a deeper relationship with our Lord Jesus Christ. And when you do that, your life gets easier. Not necessarily because of circumstances and situations, but simply because you have faith to be able to move forward. We want you to join us here. We're going to give you a couple of numbers that you can use. Always reminding you that we're available to you too through EWTN Radio's YouTube channel and Facebook page. In the little chat feature there, all you need to do is to put your question or your comment. It'll get to us here. And I tell you, call early. I mean, here we are. We're into the last half of the show, and what's going to happen is boom, 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 boom. We're going to run out of time. 800-221-9460 is the toll-free number for you. If you're in North America, it's 800-221-9460. If you are not in North America, country code 1-205-271-2980. Country code 1-205-271-2980. You know, you mentioned, Father, this business about marriage, and that if someone's in an abusive relationship, that Holy Mother Church does not expect for them to remain in an abusive relationship. They need to protect themselves, protect the children. But this does bring up another point, and I think it's one that we do need to address. Many people think that obtaining a decree of nullity through the church is Catholic divorce, and I don't think that anything could be further from the truth. So let's just talk about this for a few moments as we move forward through the myths. myths. So, Father, why don't you tell us, what is the difference between a decree of nullity obtained through Holy Mother Church versus a divorce that is obtained through civil authority?
Sure. Well, at the moment of consent, which is what we're actually looking at here, we want to see that a certain number of things are in place. If you think you're marrying the Prince of Egypt and he turns out to be a homeless guy living under a bridge, that's a factor which changes, as it were, the circumstances of your consent. So being able to know that everything is in place. So the church wants to go back, and it's not about our feelings, like I feel like it was a valid marriage, or I feel like it was not a valid marriage. Some
or
people,
I really wanted it to be.
Right, exactly. So, but it's an objective view that we are able to analyze the circumstances with the testimony of witnesses surrounding that moment of consent, just to make sure that everything was in place. If it was not, then we realize that this person is now free to initially get married in the church.
And it does go back to that, to the moment of consent, not what happens afterwards. And you've got a good illustration that you use with your students, Chris, so that we can understand the difference there.
Yeah. So imagine that you have a husband and wife, and she gets pregnant, and baby boy's born, and they bring the child home, and the child's gets older and older, and the husband's playing with the kid later, and throwing the ball in the backyard and being a great dad, et cetera, et cetera. And then imagine, it turns out, 15 years later, even 20 years later, that they discover, they do medical tests, and it turns out this man actually is not the biological father. So a declaration of nullity of marriage is similar to that. It's not about what happens 15, 20 years later. It's really about what happens when the couple gets married. So let's say I fly off to Vegas today and I meet a showgirl and I go through a marriage ceremony with her. Well, that marriage, that ceremony, doesn't really create a marriage. Why? Well, I'm already married to somebody else. So I'm not eligible to be married to anybody, to the Vegas showgirl. And so if I went through a marriage ceremony with her, she could have a declaration of nullity and say, look, yes, I went through a ceremony, but really, because this person wasn't eligible to be married, he's already married to somebody else, there was really no marriage there from the very beginning. And so that's really what this process is about, because a real marriage is, again, about unconditional love, and a real valid sacramental marriage lasts as long as they both shall live, just as the vow says.
Yeah. When we think about this, we often think about the fact that people have to also be emotionally mature. And one of the other myths that you have in your book here is that love is all we need. Love alone is going to make this work, and that's not the case, because there might be a day when you don't exactly feel that passionate emotion that we describe as love, but that's not really what love is anyway. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So in the vow, when you say I love you, I'll love you all the days of my life, good times and bad, well, that can't mean I'm going to feel great about you. I'm going to feel wonderful. We're going to have a warm, fuzzy relationship every minute. And part of the reason it can't mean that is that we don't have full control over our emotions, right? I mean, we can have things that affect us, what we eat, getting a horrible sleep, and we wake up and we're just in a bad mood. And that's just the reality. So it doesn't make any sense to promise to have a particular emotional state from now till death do us part.
Well, who could live in that emotional state anyway?
Yeah, we can't.
You wear yourself out.
Exactly, we can't control that. So the love that's promised in marriage is not love as an emotion, but love as a decision, as a free choice. I choose to do what's good for you in good times and in bad, and sickness and health. Not I choose to feel a certain way, because again, we can't control that.
How do we begin to appropriate within our lives before marriage this idea of self-sacrifice? Are there ways in which we can begin to live this before we actually are living it in a marital situation?
Wonderful question, because I think we see that kids that come from stable families, and this doesn't mean that if you don't have a stable family it's not going to work, but kids that come from stable families have more of the tools necessary to be able to deny themselves. There's this beautiful story of Rosa in Spain. She's got 15 kids, the largest family in Spain. A couple years ago, tragically, her husband died. But so now she's raising 15 kids, but she goes to daily Mass. She spends time Thanksgiving after Mass, about 10 minutes, and then goes to work. And but raising 15 kids, you have certain rules. Every older kid has a younger kid. They make sure they get fed, make sure they get to school, they do their homework, and it's great preparation. What great preparation for having their own families. And little things, like at the dinner table, they have 3 rules. You wait till the person on your right and left are served before you start eating. You take the worst piece for yourself so that you can leave the better piece for your siblings. These are all great little teaching moments, kind of depriving yourself of having the best piece, of eating before the other people are served, but it builds within you the capacity to see the cross as a positive thing, redemptive suffering. And the third thing there is just one little mortification at every meal, maybe leaving the glass of water or not taking salt or pepper or butter. And in that way you can realize that not everybody has 3 square meals a day, and that also that we're not just created to always be comfortable and well-fed, and that helps to prepare too very much for the marriage relationship, which will require of you a sacrifice in order for you to find again what you're looking for.
Yes. Well, you know, what a beautiful way to approach family life, and what a beautiful way to train children for marriage and for any future vocation, but also for the rigor of daily living in society. And you know, that's a very intentional kind of parenting. And a larger family lends itself to this. And this is one of the tragedies of our day and time, I think, is that through contraception, through the opportunity for abortion, you know, we have become very self-centered and very self-focused, but a larger family environment really helps to train children what it means to be loving and caring, and that has to first be exemplified by the parents. And I know you have 7 children, Chris, so do you see this happening within the context of your own family life?
I do, yeah. And you know, I'm really lucky because my wife gives the kids such a great example. We had a neighbor, not next door, but the next door to that, who was blind, and she, legally blind, she, you know, could barely see in front of her. It was really very tough. And my wife reached out to her and had her over for Easter, and had taken her to doctor's appointments and getting her sandwiches. I mean, it was so edifying to me to see how she cared for this poor woman. And you know, I know all the kids saw that too, and I just think, wow, what a seed that's planted when you see mom or dad doing something like that, really reaching out to people in need. And I think that, you know, part of what I hope to do as a parent is to kind of plant those seeds. And who knows, you know, with God's help, where, you know, how they'll grow and what'll happen. But I know, you know, I was so impressed with my wife for doing that. That woman, actually, she passed away recently, and we went to her funeral and stuff. And I just thought, you know, she made her life a little better. She had a very hard life, had all health problems, but, you know, my wife did that for her, and then the kids saw that. I just thought that was just terrific.
And so, you know, the takeaway from what we've just heard Father say and Christopher say is that we've got to live love. We've got to live charity. And, you know, self-knowledge goes a long way. Teresa of Avila says, you know, that there's no progress in the spiritual life at all if we don't have self-knowledge. You know if you're a giving person. You know if you're generous. You know if it's difficult for you sometimes to give way to someone else. Well, if you discover that about yourself, it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. The Holy Spirit is illuminating an area of your heart where He wants to take up residence within you. And so it becomes an opportunity for you to practice the virtue. Right? And I love the idea, in both illustrations here, of going out of your way to be present to the other through a sacrificial action, whether it's at the dinner table or whether it is driving someone in need to the doctor's office. So let's think about those things as we go to the break. When we come back, more with our guest today, Father Scott Borgman, Christopher Kaiser. The numbers are there for you. We're going to be right back. Stay with us.
Now there's a fast and easy way to get in touch with EWTN. The EWTN Everything number. Call 1-800-447-EWTN to get the latest information on programming, special events, pilgrimages, and more. You can even make a donation by calling 1-800-447-EWTN. Our EWTN Family Viewer Services representatives are ready to help you with whatever your needs may be. It's easy, fast, and family-friendly. The EWTN Everything number, 1-800-447-EWTN.
This August, discover the universal bond that connects us all, family. EWTN takes you to Dublin, where young and old gather to celebrate the World Meeting of Families 2018. Doug Keck and Johnnette Binkovic-Williams will be there with a daily wrap-up of this 6-day event that honors the importance of the family as the domestic church. Faithful Catholics from around the globe will be joined in prayer, worship, and powerful catechesis in the land of St. Patrick. And Pope Francis will conclude the celebration with his apostolic visit to Ireland. Go to EWTN.com/WMOF for all the latest news and program schedules. The World Meeting of Families 2018 from Dublin, Ireland, August 21st through 26th, here on the Global Catholic Network, EWTN.
If any man's work is burned up, he will suffer loss, though he himself will be saved, but only as through fire. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 15.
Welcome back, friends. We are visiting with our guest today. We've got Christopher Kaiser with us. We've got Father Scott Borgman with us, and we're talking about this wonderful book. I want to send you out to EWTN's religious catalog, The 7 Big Myths About Marriage. It's available for you there. It's written by our guest, Christopher Kaiser. A really excellent book for us to read if we're married, and a very great book to read if we're not married. It really prepares you for what is true about marriage, and we don't want to live under misconceptions or misunderstandings. We want to know the truth. It's the only thing that sets us free, the only thing that can lead us to true happiness and fulfillment in this life and in the next. So get on out there to EWTN's religious catalog, EWTNRC.com. Purchase a copy for yourself and for your loved ones. While you're out there twinkling in those happy little keys, do stop by our website. It's womenofgrace.com. We've got great resources for you out there too, one of which is our Women of Grace exclusive subscribership program. Tons of benefits. I'll let you go out there and read about them. But let me just say this about that. It opens up all of the archives of Women of Grace and the programming that we did prior to Women of Grace. All of the shows are there. Podcasts are there. Retreat talks, conference presentations, webinars, all kinds of great stuff. So go on out there and check it out. Well, we've got a caller with us today. Lula is with us. Hello, Lula.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
I have 2 questions.
Sure.
One question is, I know marriage is a sacrament. But
yes.
When you're married and your husband tells you that if you love me, give me my freedom. Now, how do you resolve that problem? The second one is, I asked him to go for counseling, and he said, no, you need counseling. How do you stay together with a man like him?
So Lula, let me ask you this question. When your husband says that if you loved him, you would give him his freedom, does he mean freedom outside of marriage? Is he talking about leaving you there?
This is what he said. This is what he said to me. If you love me, give me my freedom.
Okay.
How can you understand that? Of course, naturally, we winded up I divorced him finally. But he was going both directions, like living double life. So I guess that's what he meant, is to let him go.
Yeah.
Let him be free. have fun, but then how, that's not a marriage.
No, it's what a difficult situation you find yourself in. So let's see what Father and Chris have to say. You know, these are hard cases. There's no getting around it. You know, we talk about dispelling the myths, and we give scenarios that are the best, and realizing that there's difficulties and struggles in life. But then we come up against these very serious situations. Father, what do you advise?
Sometimes you do find yourself in a situation that is not compatible with the vows that you made to each other. And if the other, obviously she mentioned their counseling, and Lula, I'll be praying for you and your husband. I think prayer is a great tool. It does work, and we've got to bathe our relationships in a lot of prayer before moving forward. And then they're continuing perhaps to emphasize the importance of counseling. Nobody's perfect, and on the surface this seems like an insurmountable problem, but with the right kind of counseling, even if Lula cannot get her husband to go, if she can at least go, maybe it could help her to see more objectively kind of the relationships and the steps to take in the future.
Yeah, it's a very hard thing, and I think you know, one of the aspects of this that I would want to know, which we're not able to ask Lula, would be, you know, did there seem to be problems with commitment at the inception of the marriage? I don't know how long they were married, but sometimes these are long-standing issues that go all of the way back. I know of several cases where the gentleman was unfaithful even through the courtship phase, you know, and remained unfaithful through the life of the marriage. Well, now here is something where you've got to look at the intention. You know, did I intend to be faithful to the vows? In which case then that could be taken to the church for consideration for a decree of nullity. What do you advise, Chris?
Well, my heart really goes out to her. I just think that is unbelievably hard, and I'm sorry for her, and the whole situation just seems very difficult. I do think that one of the gifts that God gives us is, even when we have very difficult situations, even when we have the cross, part of the joy of being Christian, I think, is that we always have Christian hope. And the reality is, no matter what situation we're in, even the very, very worst situation possible, we know by faith that this is not going to last forever, and that doesn't ruin everything, and there's always something we can do about it.
That's right.
And the reason we know that is that we know it won't last forever because our lives are limited, right? If we know that whatever, even if it's a terrible situation, it's not going to go on forever. Our life is limited, and hopefully after we die, we'll have a chance to enjoy eternal happiness. And no matter what we go through, even situations that are terrible, I think that Christian hope is something that we can hold on to and can help us to move forward and make the best out of even a very difficult situation. But yeah, I'm gonna pray for that couple also, and ask God to really help them to move forward in a positive direction. And as long as we're alive, there's always the possibility of repentance and change.
That's right.
Right? And so we can hope that there's a breakthrough and a conversion and a move in the right direction.
Yeah. And I want to suggest this too to you, Lula, and to all of you watching today, because we're well aware of the fact that there are many marriages that have very difficult tones to them and very difficult situations that accompany them. But, you know, for the duration, for the period of time that God entrusts that cross to you, it's a portion of the cross of our Lord, for the period of time that He entrusts that cross to you, you know, use it as a great means of purification for yourself and for others. Attach it to the sufferings of Christ. Embrace it. You know, I know that this sounds, you know, like something that can never be done, but the fact of the matter is, not only can it be done, but we gain great merit in grace when we are uniting all of these sufferings to the cross of Christ. So, and there is a certain kind of a joy that comes with that, a certain kind of a sense of accomplishment in a healthy way, that this is not for naught, that there is a purpose and a value to what I am experiencing today. I want to thank the two of you for being with us. We are at the close of our program. Hard to believe. It's been wonderful to have you as guests for this live show edition. We're going to do 2 additional programs together, friends. on this very same topic. So you're going to want to watch for those to be coming up. Just a great opportunity for us to dig a little bit more deeply into the reality, the beauty, the gift of the married state. Father, wonderful job.
Thank you.
Christopher, thank you so much. And friends, let me get you out there to Christopher's book. This is a must-have book, The 7 Big Myths About Marriage, available for you at EWTN's religious catalog. That's EWTNRC.com. EWTNRC.com. Like I like to say, it is the home of holy reminders. We've got this book for you, and Christopher's other book is there. I think that we've probably got several books out there. Just put his name in, Kaczor, Kazer, and up will pop all of the books available for you there. It's been great being with you today in this special live edition. Until we're together again, may God richly bless you. Bye-bye now.
Well, I think we're facing much spiritual crisis all around in our world today.
Went through a very difficult teenage years to the point where I dropped out of high school. I got thrown in jail.
My father, he had multiple affairs. He has at least 15 other kids that we know of.
The ultrasound progressed for a while. The doctor didn't say anything. And he said, you were having twins, but one of your twins has died.
It's no secret that there's a lot of problems out there. The pressure on the family is really tremendous.
These are truly kind of life and death issues. Abortion, what is marriage? Does God exist? Why am I here?
America's confused in terms of their identity, their role in the world. What's the role of a father? What's the role of a mother?
It's getting to something that we've lost in our times. We're busy.
We're going to say that, well, I have a football game to go to. I have to watch several hours of TV and listen to talk radio. I have to get on my social media.
The common thread is a concern for the state of humanity.
What are we doing today? Are we responding?
I adore thee, O Jesus, God of love, truly present in the most holy Eucharist. I adore thee who hast come to thine own, was not received by them. I adore thee whom the majority of mankind reject and despise. I adore thee whom the impious incessantly offend by their sacrileges and blasphemies. I adore thee who are grieved by the coldness and indifference even of a vast number of Christians. I adore thee, O infinite goodness, who has wrought so many miracles in order to reveal thy love for us. I adore thee with all the angels and saints, and with those chosen souls that are now already the blessed of thy Father, and are all aglow with burning love to thee. I adore thee with all thy friends, O Jesus. With them I prostrate myself at the foot of the altar, to offer thee my most profound homage, to receive.
So we've got to start that today.